Throughout your day, do you have the impulsive reflex of constantly picking up your phone? Do you spend hours on trivial things like YouTube, TikTok, or Netflix? Have you lost the ability to concentrate on an important task for an hour? Are you disappointed with the life you're currently living? Do you have a bitter taste of what our society has become?
Is it just me? Or is it getting crazier out there?
It is certainly tense. People are upset. They're struggling.
The majority of humans are influenced by an inexplicable force that drives them to engage in actions that are detrimental to their well-being. If you think all of this is just a matter of chance, think again. Everything has been orchestrated by a well-structured system to control and influence the population. My name is Tonio Gacci, and today we will delve deep into the reason why our society is sick and why most people are dissatisfied with their lives. To understand all of this, we will explore the thoughts of Jean Baudrillard and the messages conveyed in the film Matrix, which are interconnected. I advise you to watch this video with headphones to immerse yourself and understand all the subtleties that arise from it. At the beginning, we will discuss politically correct topics. As the video progresses, more controversial topics will be addressed. You will also discover the solution suggested by the film Matrix to live in our decadent society. Stay until the end to uncover Baudrillard's most controversial thoughts. In fact, he has likely been censored and invited less to the media and television shows because of it. Therefore, I cannot guarantee that this video will remain online for long. It is best for you to watch this video now before it's too late. Now, let's not waste another second and embark on this journey with me. Jean Baudrillard is a highly influential sociologist and philosopher of postmodernism. He can even be considered a visionary because he accurately predicted the shape of our present society even before the advent of internet in the 1990s. He is widely known as the intellectual inspiration behind what would later be known as the Matrix. Baudrillard's analysis and criticism of postmodern society, including the media, pop culture, consumerism, and virtual simulations, have had a profound impact. In fact, his influence is so strong that it can be felt in the blockbuster film The Matrix, which took the world by storm in 1999. To set the stage, The Matrix, directed by the Wachowski siblings, portrays a future where superior intelligence controls humanity. This entity exploits human energy while keeping them blissfully unaware in a simulated reality during their sleep. Within this virtual world, everything appears normal to the inhabitants. So much so that only a few realize they are living in a computer-generated simulation called the Matrix. At the beginning of the film, we meet the protagonist, Neo, a hacker who stashes his money inside a hollow-out book. That book is none other than Jean Baudrillard's Simulacra and Simulation. Baudrillard's idea influenced the Matrix to such an extent that the actors, led by Keanu Reeves, were required to read his book. The film and Baudrillard's critique of postmodernism converge, raising questions about the current state of our society. First and foremost, Baudrillard criticized the overwhelming amount of information in our postmodern society. There's an excessive bombardment of information that leaves us passive, without time to think, analyze, or grasp what is happening. We become paralyzed by the sheer quantity of information, making it impossible to process. This is a central concept in Baudrillard's work. This information overload is metaphorically depicted in the beginning of the film The Matrix. We see Neo, half awake and daydreaming, surrounded by screens, projecting an endless stream of text and light onto his face. Through Neo, we understand that information is everywhere on the internet, in screens of all kinds. However, we feel overwhelmed and don't know how to make sense of it. We become passive, unable to manage this influx of information. You may already be aware that every second spent on screens leads to the collection of information about your consumption habits. Algorithms constantly analyze you, subjecting you to advertisement and propaganda. This also applies to your work life. You are part of a company that manages you as part of a larger whole. Instead of being seen as an individual, you are reduced to data, managed solely to maximize the company's profit. You are part of the system. You are within the matrix. In fact, you are the matrix.
This company is one of the top software companies in the world because every single employee understands that they are part of a whole. Thus, if an employee has a problem, the company has a problem.
In essence, our bodies have become information terminals, constantly bombarded with data to extract maximum resources. One of the most remarkable parallels between the film The Matrix and Baudrillard's philosophy is the concept of code. In the film, we see streams of green numbers scrolling down, representing the code. Baudrillard argues that postmodern society is a coded society, where signs and symbols have become more important than the object they represent, particularly in consumer culture. Let me give you a practical example that can help you understand this seemingly complex idea. Take Starbucks. For instance, when we drink Starbucks, we expect to be consuming coffee. The brand is called Starbucks Coffee. However, over time we have noticed that coffee has become less significant at Starbucks. Nowadays, when we drink Starbucks, are we really drinking coffee or are we consuming the brand itself? Has the original product, which aimed to promote the brand, been replaced? If we look at a large Starbucks coffee, we find that only 1/5 of it contains coffee, while the remaining 4/5 consist of milk, whipped cream, vanilla, caramel, or chocolate. Very few people actually drink coffee when they go to Starbucks, even though it was originally meant to be a coffee brand. This is a concrete example of what Baudrillard suggests. The sign, the code, the Starbucks brand has completely taken the place of the underlying product, which was coffee. The marketing power behind it is so strong that they managed to charge $6 for a coffee. Often, 4/5 of what you get is milk, whipped cream, and sugar. Yet, there are other places where you can get coffee for much less, but people don't mind because they don't want to consume coffee. They want to consume Starbucks. Starbucks must be making substantial profit because they sell something for $6 when the actual raw materials cost next to nothing. The coffee, which should be the expensive part, has become insignificant. The milk, whipped cream, and flavor syrup cost next to nothing. So the cost of a Starbucks cup must be minimal once you consider the expensive raw materials like coffee. Nevertheless, everyone believes they are drinking coffee when they go to Starbucks. In a postmodern society, people no longer care about what they are actually consuming. They no longer drink coffee. They drink the sign, the brand, the code, the illusion. To become an object of consumption, says Jean Baudrillard, the object must become a sign that is external in some way to a relationship that makes it different through the sign. It is consumed not in its materiality, but in its difference. Relation is no longer live, it is abstract, abolished in a sign object where it is consumed. The different logic of the sign value constitutes the advanced stage of the commodity, where the commodity imposes itself as a code. as a geometric locus for the circulation of model, and thus as a total medium of the culture. Baudrillard tells us that in consumer society, for an object to become a consumable object, it must transform into a sign. Coffee becomes Starbucks, so we no longer consume coffee itself, but rather its illusion, its simulation. We can apply this idea to other examples, like Apple. Apple was officially founded on the 1st of April 1976, with its initial product being the Apple I. Apple I was a computer kit that allowed users to build their own computers. However, once again, this is insignificant. Who actually knows about it? Not many. Only a few tech enthusiasts are aware of Apple history, but that's about it. The majority of people remain unaware. Today, people are not primarily interested in the raw products. They are captivated by the brands. The Apple brand has taken precedence over the products themselves. People don't buy a phone, they buy iPhone. They don't purchase a computer, they buy MacBook Pro. People buy the product from Apple because it is Apple. Apple has also launched their new Apple Vision Pro product, which in my opinion is a new level that will lock people even further into the world disconnected from reality. Everyone who uses this product will not see reality, they will see a representation of reality. One of the main ideas that Baudrillard tries to explain is that consumer society relies on code to erase the original essence of consumption and replace it with the consumption of brands and signs. To illustrate this concept, let's consider an excerpt from an interview with Jean Baudrillard in 2003, published in the journal Philosophoire. In this excerpt, he discusses the shift from object to sign and the gradual dominance of sign that overshadowed the original object or materials. Baudrillard explains, initially there are object and sign. At first, objects are represented by sign, but at a certain point, signs become predominant and start to eliminate the reference to the object. This marks the phase of simulation, where the referents start to disappear. It's important to note that these changes don't happen overnight, they occur gradually over time, with a status quo lasting for years until the simulation completely replaces reality. Initially, the sign represents the real object, such as the Starbucks sign representing coffee. However, over time, there's a transition where the sign gains dominance and gradually erases the original product. Starbucks, for example, shifts the focus away from coffee until it is replaced by the brand itself. People no longer consume coffee, they consume the sign. Next time you see someone holding a cup of coffee, question what they are actually drinking. Are they genuinely enjoying a cup of coffee? Or are they already immersed in the simulation, consuming a symbolic representation of coffee within the matrix? It's important to note that when the cup contains a minimal amount of coffee mixed with milk, sugar, vanilla, caramel, or chocolate, it can no longer be called coffee. We can use different names like latte, cappuccino, frappuccino, or iced coffee, but this variation and simulation have replaced the original substance of coffee in our daily lives. By understanding these dynamics, we can recognize how consumer society values the sign and brand over the genuine product, leading to a shift in our perception and consumption patterns. Let's go back to the movie The Matrix. There's a scene where Baudrillard's book, Simulacra and Simulation, makes an appearance. Neo encounters customers looking to buy pirated CDs, and he opens the book, revealing its hollowness. He cleverly uses it as a hiding spot for his money and a few pirated CDs. This scene symbolically represents a central idea in Baudrillard's work, the notion that beneath the surface, everything is empty and lacks substance. In a postmodern society, nothing holds true meaning. Consider this: never before in human history have we produced such an abundance of books. Bookshelves are filled with numerous authors and beautiful adorned covers. However, the books of today lack depth. They have lost their meaning. What do we find at the forefront? Books by Michelle Obama or reality TV stars, biographies of politicians whose careers are as hollow as the book themselves. Baudrillard highlights the peculiarity of modernity, where the search for meaning behind appearance was sought, like Freud's exploration of the subconscious or Marx's understanding of the profound value of labor. However, in a postmodern society, the pursuit of meaning has faded away. Things no longer need to make sense or have a connection to their origins, roots, or historical context. In a postmodern society, this aspect holds no significance. In a way, the postmodern individual no longer relies on the reference point to define their existence. They no longer seek validation through history, roots, or cultural ties. The postmodern person finds their identity in self-expression, particularly through symbols. The most accurate portrait of a postmodern individual is the digital nomad sitting in a Starbucks, proudly showcasing their MacBook adorned with the iconic Apple logo. It's the brand, the symbol, the code, once again. And of course, they are their cup of sugary latte filled with sweetness. When we observe this individual at work, we don't identify them by their personal history, origin, or cultural background. Instead, we identify them by the computer they own, the MacBook displaying the iconic beaten Apple logo. We could also extend this analysis to their clothing, the specific brands they wear, the sneakers or shoes adorning their feet. All of these elements shape the essence of the postmodern person, no longer representing a singular origin, but rather an accumulation of symbols, an assemblage of brands.
I felt sorry for guys packed into gyms, trying to look like how Calvin Klein or Tommy Hilfiger said they should.
That what a man looks like?
The postmodern individual has transformed into a screen projecting brands, no longer needing to make logical sense, have a personal narrative, or have profound statement to make. The reliance on the reference point has faded away. The traditional anchors of family, cultural heritage, ethnic background, and religious affiliation somewhere along the line, all of this diminish. What truly matters now are the signs that surround us, the multitude of brands that encompass our existence.
Did you hear that?
Hear what?
Are you sure this line is clean?
Yeah, of course I'm sure.
I better go.
Here are some important details in the movie The Matrix. Baudrillard's book Simulacra and Simulations opened with a chapter on nihilism. And it's not a coincidence. According to Baudrillard, our society is becoming a simulation in every aspect. Politics has turned into a performance. There's no real distinction between left and right. There's a lack of genuine purpose. It's all an elaborate masquerade. War has also become a simulation. Soldiers control drones and have lost their direct connection to death and violence. Modern soldiers can hardly differentiate between similar training and actual warfare. Nowadays, the majority of soldiers manipulate joystick to operate drones instead of using real weapons. They no longer witness the victim they're killing. In fact, numerous recordings of American soldiers during attacks in Iraq captured them laughing and talking while shooting real individuals. To them, it didn't feel like real war. They were immersed in a video game, seated comfortably in an office hundreds of kilometers away from the actual battlefield, with only a screen as their interface. When they press the trigger, they struggle to distinguish between the video games played in their youth and the actual people they're taking lives of. War was truly become virtual, even in its real existence. This simulation can also be extended to romance, love, relationship, and sexuality. They replicate the relationship and behaviors of their favorite stars. They emulate pornographic films. Our perception of romance has been shaped by cinema, cartoons, and the influence of Walt Disney.
Because most people eat that shit up. The pretty woman, the pretty man, love at first sight, the first kiss, the breakup, the makeup, the expensive wedding, and they drive off into the sunset. Everyone knows it's fake, but they watch it like it's real fucking life.
You'll be surprised by the number of people modify their behavior to resemble a character they've seen on their screens. If Beyoncé releases a song promoting the single life, many women will detach themselves from their partners to become strong and independent, striving to be like her.
I said certified free, 7 days a week, wet and gushy, make that pull-out game weak.
If Cardi B promotes promiscuity, many women will indulge in casual encounters inspired by her. It gives us an idea of how much simulation has taken over. Our experience of romance is no longer based on our own design or how it should be, but rather influenced by the propaganda of influencers, TV series, cartoons, and movies that simulate romance. Without realizing it, our real romantic lives unknowingly try to mimic the romantic scenarios we see on screens. The same goes for pornography. Older generation, now over 35-40 years old, had sexual experiences before the prevalence of pornography. It's more or less okay for them. But for the generation that follow, it is a real problem. They encounter pornography before experiencing real sexual relationship. By the age of 12, 99% of young people have seen at least one pornographic film. The psychological impact of watching or having access to pornography as a child has been greatly underestimated. We should be extremely cautious about this phenomena. When most teenagers reach adolescence or around the age of 15 when they start having sexual relationship, they often try to replicate what they have seen in pornographic films because that's become their reference point. It's better to have no reference at all than to rely on pornographic as a guide. There's a significant difference between pornographic and real sexual relationships. In pornography, it suggests that a normal sexual encounter involves pulling your partner's hair, slapping them, throwing them to the ground, and engaging in rough sexual acts. Some pornographic films portray a certain level of violence and claim it as a normal sexual experience. They imply that your partner should enjoy having this type of behavior. When you have experiences before being exposed to pornography, you can distinguish between reality and simulation. You can watch those scenes and they might arouse you to some extent, but you perceive them as virtual experiences. You recognize the difference between what happens in real life with your partner and the simulation portrayed in pornography. You can engage in sexual encounters that range from gentle to aggressive or even intense, if that's what both partners desire. It's a gradual exploration of each other's sexuality. Little by little you discover whether she enjoys being spanked or not. Every woman is different. Some don't like it at all, while others are the opposite. One partner can genuinely like intense sex. When you move on to another partner, it may be completely different. You give her a light tap on the bum, she might not appreciate it. Depends. That's when you learn to adjust and adapt. It's the reality of sexuality. You try to understand and explore each other's bodies, discovering what they like or dislike. That's how mutual pleasure is achieved. The other person also learns what you enjoy. In pornography, there's no room for such understanding. The question of what the other person likes, desires, or what brings pleasure to both partners doesn't exist. In pornography, there's a script, a scenario, and a simulation. The concept of code always arises. as a code that dictates how a sexual encounter should unfold. Consequently, countless young people who have grown up with pornography unknowingly no longer engage in real sexual experiences. They unknowingly engage in simulations. During the act, they recall scenes from the numerous films they watch and worry about their performance. Many men today prioritize performance, but it's irrelevant. It has nothing to do with the essence of sex. It's not about performing like in high-level sports. The issue with pornography is that it transforms sexuality into a competitive sport where performance becomes crucial. It falsely implies that having a large penis is necessary to satisfy women, but that's not the case at all. There's an ideal size, and it's more about how you use it rather than its sheer magnitude. It's much more nuanced than simply having a big penis penetrating a vagina. And of course, women in pornography screams and moan. However, in real life, you discover that some women are vocal while others are not, even if they experience immense pleasure. Some women naturally prefer to remain silent. Yet when people have been influenced by porn, a woman doesn't scream, particularly as depicted in American films where screaming is prevalent. Even young American women who don't need or want to scream still do it because they've been conditioned by porn. They feel compelled to scream excessively to make it appear as though they experience pleasure. This disconnects us from reality to a great extent. In today's context, both men and women engage in simulation during sexual encounters. Thus, today's sexual encounters involve men simulating, women simulating, and all of this become a massive simulation, as Baudrillard explained in his book. Sexuality has become a simulation. Seduction has transformed into a simulation, and even romance has succumbed to this simulated facade. As a collective, we strive to imitate what we have witnessed elsewhere. In a society where family ties are weakening, where relationships with parents, friends, older siblings, or cousins are fading away, our remaining reference points become television, the internet, and ultimately, the simulation becomes our prevailing frame of reference. We can also apply the idea of simulation to contemporary art, as discussed by Baudrillard. He shared his dislike for the postmodern architecture of the Beaubourg Center in Paris. According to Baudrillard's work, the Beaubourg effect, he criticized it as a monument that indulges in mass simulations, a cultural energy devouring black hole where all content materialize, absorb, and vanish. Beaubourg is like a massive simulator of culture, a place where institutionalized culture is consumed, emphasizing the concept of hyperreality. Hyperreality goes beyond reality itself. It is a simulated reality that appears more real than reality. But why does art, which is already real, need a museum building like Beaubourg, which itself is a work of art, to exhibit other artworks? Beaubourg is so extravagant, so excessive that it overshadows art it is meant to showcase. In the postmodern world, art has undergone a transformation. Initially, it was present everywhere, created by anyone with something to express and the means to do so. However, it has become institutionalized, confined to specific locations. Today we have art production confined within boxes. If it's displayed in a museum, it is considered art. If not, it is not recognized as such. Beaubourg, in a way, has created a simulation where art takes a backseat. People visit Beaubourg with the expectation of seeing art, not expecting to encounter rubbish. Unfortunately, there are exhibitions that display perplexing pieces, like scraps of cloth hanging on walls. You can't help but wonder, what is this? It looks as if someone wiped their behind with the sheet and hung it up. In that case, one could argue that Amber Heard defecating on Johnny Depp's bed could be considered art. There are individuals fascinated by this display, pondering, what is the meaning behind it? In truth, it means nothing. It is the work of mediocre artists who manage to secure exhibition. Some may find my statement extreme, but it is essential to acknowledge the existence of such occurrences. The shitty art actually exists. In May 1961, Piero Manzoni produced 90 cans of artist feces. The exact number of cans sold during Manzoni's lifetime remains uncertain, but a receipt from 23rd of August 1962 confirms that Manzoni sold one can to Alberto Lucia in exchange for 30 grams of 18-karat gold. Though you realize the absurdity of this situation, as we explore Baudrillard's notion of simulation, what captures our interest is not the direct experience of art itself. Rather, we are intrigued by the simulation of art, an alternative reality of art that eludes easy understanding. If, like many, you struggle to comprehend contemporary art, such as vomit stains or feminist staining sheets with menstrual blood and labeling it as feminist art, you might question if it still qualifies as art. However, the truth is, if you no longer understand it, it's because it is no longer art. It has become a simulation of art. What you witness is art within the matrix, art in the virtual realm. This trivial and meaningless distraction pulls you away from what truly matters. They numb your perception, preventing you from seeing reality, a concept depicted in the movie Matrix, particularly in the scene with the woman in the red dress.
The Matrix is a system, Neo. That system is our enemy.
Remember this: when you receive information, your mind creates its own misunderstandings. To truly grasp the Matrix, you must train your ability to see beyond what the film presents. Perhaps some of you are familiar with the monkey business illusion. In this illusion, you are asked to count the ball passes between players while the gorilla casually crosses the field. Morpheus is about to do something similar, replacing the mental effort of counting passes with a beautiful woman in the red dress. Initially, your attention focuses on the content of Morpheus's captivating speech, as he introduces the resident of the city as individuals helplessly trapped in a system, most of whom are unwilling to be unplugged.
Most of these people are not ready to be unplugged. And many of them are so inert, so hopelessly dependent on the system, that they will fight to protect it. Were you listening to me, Neo? Or were you looking at the woman in the red dress? I was... Look again. Freeze it.
The criticism of Neo's distraction by the woman in red also applies to you, the viewers. You miss the message being conveyed and fail to see what was truly being shown. The rebel of the Nebuchadnezzar can effortlessly replicate the entire matrix. They possess Miss Code and can incorporate it into their programs at will. While the woman in red is presented as a divergent, the color red throughout the film symbolizes truth. Interestingly, this matrix replica is made up of multiple replicas, much like a grand cast of twins and triplets dressed in black and white, representing duality. The freeze frame intended to showcase this fact was wide before your eyes, but like the gorilla, you likely didn't notice. We could delve into various interpretations of what the woman in red represents. She symbolizes our attachment to sensory experiences or illustrates the danger of our desires. She embodies the illusion that leads to suffering or the internal pursuit of pleasure for the weak. But her main purpose is to distract you. By missing the essential point, you become akin to those trapped in the matrix. The narrative led your attention astray. The film just proved that you are manipulable. Your mind is controlled even though you're not aware of it. The woman in red serves to divert your attention from the fundamental truth. In the matrix, there is no absolute reality. If you haven't grasped this concept yet, numerous reminders will come later in the film, attempting to awaken your mind, which may still be enchanted by the captivating illusion. Among them, there is the famous sequence often interpreted as a philosophical statement, but perhaps it can be taken in the literal sense.
Instead, only try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.
If there's no spoon, it might mean there's no reality. No spoon, no reality.
You think that's air you're breathing now?
The idea that reality isn't what it seems is not about denying its existence. It's about admitting that our perception of things and the events that make it up is influenced by our lack of knowledge. So we only see the world through our own conditioning, which stops us from grasping fundamental truth. It's like watching movies through emotional, intuitive, or intellectual lenses, forgetting that these three aspects are deeply connected. Here, we dive into a profound teaching that can only be revealed to those who accept things as they truly are, an interdependence of production. This means our identity and personality are illusory representations. To fully understand this, we should learn to observe and know ourselves better. It's not just a philosophical viewpoint, it's the only path that leads to putting an end to suffering for good. Junk food, pornography, sugar, addictions, toxic relationships, lack of meaning and dissatisfaction. All these negative elements that may be present in your life are the result of not knowing yourself well enough. When Neo meets the Oracle, she asks if he knows why Morpheus brought him to her and if he believes he's the one. To this, he responds,
Honestly, I don't know.
You know what that means? It's Latin. Means know thyself.
To fully know oneself, it means understanding both our ignorance, doubts and mistakes, as well as the invisible principles and eternal truths.
I'm not the one.
Sorry, kid. You got the gift, but it looks like you're waiting for something.
Neo is filled with confusion. He doesn't know himself and seems to expect the Oracle to provide him with answers, but she subtly encourages him to see the truth on his own. Knowing oneself means becoming united with all aspects of our being and uncovering the truth. Here, Neo confronts his own doubts and lack of knowledge. His conversation with the Oracle wasn't meant to reveal his future, but to confront his present. He must discover who he is on his own, because eliminating ignorance is a necessary step that comes from fully understanding the conditioning that shapes our perception. Then, Neo must transcend appearances to see what truly exists, removing the veil of illusion and freeing his mind to realize his authentic nature. This is the path followed by all seekers to cleanse their mind of suffering and realize their profound essence.
I'm trying to free your mind, Neo, but I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it.
We can only help unveil the truth obscured before our eyes. The end of ignorance comes when we decide to accept ourselves and know our direction. However, there's a significant difference between Baudrillard's idea and the film Matrix. Baudrillard's warning revolves around the growing difficulty of distinguishing between reality and simulation in our present time. It is becoming increasingly challenging to tell them apart. The simulation is gradually eroding reality, seeking to exist independently. This is where Baudrillard begins to differ from the Matrix. According to him, if there were a clear boundaries between the real and simulated world, the situation wouldn't be as severe. People could choose to live in either reality or simulation. However, The problem lies in the current merging of the two. What's more concerning is that the simulation is overpowering and supplanting reality. People's lives in the simulated world are becoming more important than their lives in the real world. To exemplify this, many individuals prioritize their image on platforms like TikTok, Instagram, or Tinder over their real-life image. Another example is the makeup worn by women, creating a fictitious beauty. You might see some women with makeup appearing extraordinary, but when they remove it all, they become entirely different human beings. In fact, women are skillful at using camera angles, cosmetic, and other techniques to enhance their appearance beyond reality. As long as they receive validation through social media, they feel content. They may be more affected by negative comments on Instagram than in the physical world. This is where the significant shift in civilization is occurring. Our virtual lives are gaining precedence over our real lives.
That's the sense you get just from me?
From your rep report analytics. If we drill down into the numbers, you have got a solid popularity arc here.
Employers analyze candidates' online activities on platforms like Facebook and Instagram to form opinions about them in the real world. Yet, one's virtual life can be entirely fabricated. It allows for the creation of false identities, fictional lives, and the utilization of professional photographers to present a more attractive version of oneself. Despite this fabrication, people tend to respect and value the virtual persona more than the genuine self in the physical world. In the virtual world, individuals who would ignore you in real life might show interest based on the photo in the Lamborghini. It's relatively easy to orchestrate such situations. One can rent or borrow a Lamborghini without much difficulty. People can create the life they desire online, attracting attention from others. This virtual life can bring new friends and conquests because, ultimately, people become more captivated by the projected image than the true essence of a person. However, most individuals are unaware of this phenomenon, mistakenly believing that the virtual world mirrors reality. Baudrillard's concept of permeability sets him apart from other philosophies, including the Matrix, where the real and virtual worlds remain separate and independent, unable to intersect. But in Baudrillard's simulated world, where he speaks of simulation and simulacra, it is precisely the permeability between these two worlds that ultimately merge and becomes one. Beyond the simulation of reality, there's a simulacra, which is in a way worse than the simulation, because the simulacra is false. The simulacra is a lie, a distortion of reality.
And now?
Holy fuck! Holy shit! Fuck, he's right. He's right. He's right. Can I?
He's not real. He's a sort of mental projection. You can see him. I can't.
Desert of the real.
In his book, Baudrillard also talks about the desert of real, which the movie Matrix also draws inspiration from. Morpheus wakes up Neo to the desert of reality, showing him the world outside the Matrix. The desert of real is a term used by Baudrillard in his book Simulacra and Simulation. It refers to the point where simulation becomes so dominant that it destroys the real world, causing everyone to shift towards simulation or the metaverse. Baudrillard mentioned a surrealist writer, Georges-Louis Borges, in his book on exactitude in science, which includes a short story from 1946. The story tells of an empire that creates an incredibly accurate map, eventually covering the entire territory. However, as the empire declines, the map deteriorates, crumbles, and disappears. Baudrillard explained that today it is not the map that vanishes, as in Borges' surreal tale, but rather the empire itself, reality disintegrating while the map or simulation triumphs, completely replacing reality. The map now extends beyond representing the territory. It becomes larger and more real than the actual territory. It substitutes for the territory. This concept is what Baudrillard calls hyperreality. For instance, nowadays when we go out, we are often fixated on our GPS in the car or on our phones. Even when we walk, everyone is engrossed in their screens, trying to navigate and locate the next street or intersection. Despite reality being right in front of us, with buildings, streets, and people around, we hardly interact or pay attention. Street signs, intersections, and landmarks no longer capture our gaze. Instead, we rely on our phones and GPS, trusting the virtual world to guide us. The map has surpassed the territory in importance. The digital dot on the GPS have become more significant than our physical footsteps. We place more trust in the map on our screens than in the actual world we traverse. The map is no longer a mere representation, it exists independently, replacing the territory itself. Who questions GPS nowadays? Who could dare challenge Google's direction? Most people unquestioningly follows Google's guidance, assuming it to be accurate, but not questioning it poses a problem. The majority simply trust what Google shows them, without considering the possibility of it being an illusion or displaying a non-existent reality. The map is trusted entirely because it has become so precise that it replaced the territory. Baudrillard's idea is profoundly powerful. If we all continue to immerse ourselves in the virtual world, what will remain of the real world? As we communicate, interact, find partners, and make friends online, and with the emergence of the metaverse, we may cease going out for coffee. Instead, we will each prepare our own coffee at home and gather around the virtual table, conversing while physically isolated in our apartment or studios. The traditional meeting spots like cafes, restaurants, and public squares will lose their significance as people flock to the virtual realm, the metaverse. Real life, the physical world, will begin to fade and crumble in favor of the virtual.
Because you wear Apple Vision Pro and your eyes are covered, we engineered a system that uses advanced machine learning to represent you realistically when you're in FaceTime. Your persona dynamically reflects your face and hand movements. So when you're chatting, people see your eyes, hands, and true expressions.
Although the creators of the Matrix film claims a connection to Baudrillard, he strongly believes that Matrix does not faithfully represent his ideas from the book Simulacra and Simulation. To explain Baudrillard's reason for distancing himself from Matrix, let me share an excerpt from an interview he gave to Le Nouvel Observateur on June 19, 2003, regarding Matrix. In the interview, Baudrillard criticized Matrix for its clear distinction between the real and the virtual. Baudrillard finds it more interesting to explore the moments when these two worlds intersect. According to him, Matrix confuses simulation with illusion. It resembles Plato's allegory of the cave, where chained men in the cave face a wall and perceive only projected shadows as their reality, mistaking this shadow for an accurate representation of the world. This allegory highlights the difference between the real world and our conditioned perception. Similar duality exists in Christianity, where the earthly realm represents a sad, harsh, and difficult world, while the heavenly realm symbolizes a grander, perfect, and ideal world. In the context of Matrix, Neo finds himself somewhat in Plato's cave, where he witnesses the virtual world, then emerges to experience the true nature of the world.
Welcome to the real world.
Baudrillard argues that Matrix mistakenly conflates simulation with the allegory of the cave, resulting in the film missing the essence of his profound philosophy. Baudrillard acknowledges similarities but suggests that other films like The Truman Show, Minority Report, or Mulholland Drive have explored the blurring boundaries between reality and the virtual realm more effectively. Matrix, on the other hand, fails to evoke the same level of disturbance. The characters in the Matrix are completely detached from the digitized world residing in Zion, the city of resistance. Baudrillard finds it intriguing to examine what transpires at the intersection of these two worlds. However, the film's primary drawback lies in confusing the novel challenge posed by simulation with the conventional problem of illusion found in Plato's philosophy. This misunderstanding arising from perceiving the world as a radical illusion, a dilemma that great cultures have historically resolved through art and symbolization. What we've created to cope with suffering is a simulated reality, a virtual universe that is gentle, sanitized, and free from danger and negativity.
I know this steak doesn't exist. I know that when I put it in my mouth, the Matrix is telling my brain that it is juicy and delicious. After 9 years, you know what I realize? Ignorance is bliss.
The simulated reality has now taken over the real world as the ultimate solution. Matrix fully embraces this concept, presenting dreams, utopias, and fantasies in a transparent manner. Now let's delve into the heart of Baudrillard's thinking, something truly distinct from anything we have encountered since Plato. Baudrillard has developed the notion of the disappearing referent, the vanishing of the real world. It's similar to the example of the Starbucks coffee and the sign, where initially both exist together. However, gradually the sign begins to replace the referent, until the referent disappears entirely, leaving only the sign. This subtlety is missed by the Matrix films, leading Baudrillard to believe that they have somewhat missed the point. Despite the Matrix crew's admiration for him, he refuses the comparison. What he wants to convey is not the coexistence of two worlds, the virtual and the real, but rather the destructive nature of postmodernity on reality. Soon, only simulation will remain as the real world fades away. Baudrillard's message is that we are not moving toward a world where simulation and the real world exist side by side. Instead, we're heading towards a world dominated by simulation, existing for its own sake. Detached from the need for the real world, the significance of the real world will diminish. Baudrillard explains, today abstraction is no longer about maps, doubles, mirrors, or concepts. Simulation is no longer about a territory, a reference point, or a substance. It is the creation of the reality without origin or actuality, generated by models. This is what we call hyperreality. The territory no longer precedes the map, nor does it outlive it. It's now the map that precedes and creates the territory.
Let me out! Let me out! I want out!
In the movie Matrix, you could enter or exit the Matrix, even explore the real world. But in Baudrillard's more cynical view, the real world is fragmented, abandoned, destroyed by simulation. The boundary between the two is fading away. The map now covers the entire territory, replacing it entirely. Soon we won't have the option to return to the real world. Today we can choose to be in the virtual realm, on the internet, in the metaverse, or in reality. However, we are gradually transitioning to a world where choice becomes obsolete. Simulation will become our way of life.
It's a bubble universe ruled by an asshole god.
Put us in here?
Mm-hmm. Drink your vodka.
How do we get out?
They really drink it. Drink it. You can't leave.
What?
None of us can.
Baudrillard explained that in the past, science fiction and imagined world were far removed from reality. They were filled with fantasies, night and fire-breathing dragons, a completely detachment from reality. Fiction was truly fiction. But since the Industrial Revolution, even fiction has become more aligned with reality. Works like Jules Verne novels, for instance, closely mirror reality. Verne's invention and futuristic vision were based on existing research and known technological advancements. He built his fiction on that foundation. Many consider him a visionary. However, the predictions in his novel were not as extraordinary as they seem. They were predictable in those who had a keen interest in science, like Verne himself. We already foresaw the development of modern submarines and spacecraft based on what we witnessed at the time. Even in fiction, which should be boundlessly imaginative, science fiction turned to mirror reality. We imagine advancement in biology and space exploration, and some concepts from films like 2001's A Space Odyssey could potentially become reality in a century. Baudrillard discusses this to illustrate that even in our literature and thinking, the world is increasingly simulation. Fiction is merging with reality, and our envisioned future is often built upon existing information. It is an extrapolation of current technologies, genetic, cloning, space exploration, and the quest for other worlds. Mentally, we have limited our imagination by merging our ability to simulate with reality. If you seek the passage where Baudrillard discusses science fiction, you will find it in his book Simulacra and Simulation, under the chapter titled Simulacra and Science Fiction. I want to talk about another book by Baudrillard that provides great insight into how our contemporary world functions, both in the present and in the future. This subject is discussed in Baudrillard's book called Symbolic Exchange and Death. Baudrillard explained that a system can only survive if it appears binary, like the political spectrum of left and right, which is essentially a deceptive representation of the same system. Every unified system that aims to survive must establish a binary framework. Yin exists because yang exists, women exist because men exist, poverty exists because wealth exists, allies exist because enemies exist. The power of the American nation lies in its opposition to adversaries. If the enemy ceases to exist, the power symbolized by America also fades away. It thrives through its contrast. Pay close attention and try to grasp this point, as it holds the key to understanding the world we currently inhabit. This is a contentious notion, yet I believe it holds some validity. It may also explain why Baudrillard has been marginalized from television appearances, interviews and discussions since the 1990s and early 20s. Baudrillard openly criticized the current system, asserting that it fabricates illusory dualities such as the left-right political divide. In reality, it is the same underlying system, but for its own survival, it must create the illusion of two distant systems. In the same interview with Le Nouvel Observateur, the journalist remarked to Baudrillard, "It is quite remarkable to observe that nowadays all major successes in American marketing, from The Matrix to Madonna's latest album, explicitly present themselves as critique of the system that overwhelmingly promotes them." Baudrillard responds, "This is what makes the era quite suffocating. The system produces a deceptive negativity that is integrated into the spectacle products, much like planned obsolescence is included in industrial objects. It is in fact the most effective way to lock out any genuine alternative. There is no longer an external omega point on which to rely in contemplating this world. No more antagonistic functions. There is only a fascinated adherence. However, it is important to know that the closer a system approaches perfection, the closer it comes to total catastrophe. It is a form of objective irony where nothing is ever predetermined. The 11th of September attacks were part of this, of course. Terrorism is not an alternative power. It is merely a metaphor for the near-suicidal reversal of Western power upon itself. Baudrillard conveys a wealth of dense information in a brief text. In essence, he asserts that this is yet another characteristic of postmodernism, the illusion of duality. Today's survival-dependent system is compelled to fabricate dualities. Thus, we have left and right in politics, the West and terrorism, and the West and jihadist enemies from the East. Baudrillard stated that jihadism, terrorism, and Islamism are byproducts of the West. They are creation of the West. He implies that the American state and September 11 are all part of a plan, representing a duality contract to ensure the perpetuation of the American empire. Every empire requires a duality, and this duality must be simulated to sustain the same empire. Notably, throughout history, there has always been some form of duality. When it wasn't the Cold War, it was terrorism. As the Cold War was fading, terrorism and jihadism emerged as enemies of the West. This endured for a while, and now, with the new enemy being the virus, the pandemic, the question of jihadism and Islam has nearly vanished. The virus has become the enemy for the past 2 years.
Officers were forcing people out of their rented apartments so they could turn them into temporary quarantine facilities, all in the name of a war against a resurgent COVID.
And now we witness a return to a Cold War-like scenario where Russia is once again perceived as the enemy.
And you can see these pictures here. These are the aftermath, effectively, of a Russian attack on an area of the city popular with restaurants.
We have perpetually existed within this duality. There has been no period of tranquility. The system constantly necessitates a semblance of duality. Yet it is completely illusory construct because the same individual always occupy the top positions. The political duality of left and right philosophy has entirely disappeared. In a sense, the concept of left and right no longer hold meaning. You are engulfed by a system that governs you. Vote for whomever you wish. All candidates are part of the same system. Regardless of the candidate you choose, the outcome remains unchanged. When you vote for Obama and he becomes president, it holds absolutely no significance as he merely obeys the commands of his masters. Whether you vote for Trump or Biden, it's the same story. You are led to believe that there are different agendas. You are made to think that various possibilities exist, but it's all a deception. These are mere puppets who dutifully carry out the orders of the system. When a president makes a decision, it's not really his decision, it's the decision of the system. Therefore, no matter whom you vote for, you will end up with the exact same outcome. It's not about voting left or right, extreme right or extreme left. You are trapped in a simulation, experiencing the same situation. The illusion of choice gives the people a semblance of power, thereby pacifying them. Despite his overall cynicism in analyzing postmodern society, Baudrillard does offer a glimmer of hope amidst his skepticism. He suggests that this situation is not irreversible, but there is a possibility for it all to collapse and return to what we call the trash bin of history. Reversibility is achievable because the challenge exists, and there is an indestructible human will. Baudrillard speaks of the enduring nature of reversibility, challenge, and allure. Personally, I don't share his optimism on this matter. I believe that for the majority of the population, entering the realm of simulation is almost inevitable. However, I emphasize the term majority because I do see a glimmer of hope for small groups to break free from this system. Being aware of the problem and taking appropriate action can provide us with the freedom to live life on our own terms, to some extent. I will delve into this further in a couple minutes. As for the majority, my hope is limited. We are already more or less submerged in a simulation. People engage in simulated sexual encounters. They simulate the experience of coffee by sipping from a cup filled with sugar and vanilla. They create a simulated reality with devices like Apple Vision Pro. They simulate friendship through their Facebook and Instagram connection. We are already living in a simulation. The majority of people are completely immersed in the simulated world of consumerism. It has become the norm. I believe that things will only worsen from here. Life outside the simulation is so challenging that many find comfort within it. In a way, the simulation offers a sense of ease because the outside world is demanding. I observe countless teenagers locking themselves indoors, playing video games as the outside world intimidates them. The thought of interacting with the opposite sex or engaging in outdoor activities instills fear. Moreover, the recent pandemic intensified these fears and convictions, creating a neurotic atmosphere where handshakes were forbidden, faces were concealed, and the virtual world took precedence. For Baudrillard's concept of reversibility to become feasible, the outside world must regain its appeal and surpass the allure of the simulated realm. Genuine human connections, real-life experiences, and nature must become more enticing than the fictitious relationship and digital interactions we find on the internet, Facebook, Instagram, and other social media platforms. To ensure that the tangible world, the realm of territory, triumphs over the virtual map, the territory itself must become more captivating. Choosing to embark on a nature hike should be more rewarding than spending hours scrolling through social media feeds. This is the only path to victory, the only way to preserve the existence of the real world. It must regain its intrigue, delight, and allure, surpassing the grip of the virtual world we have willingly embraced. In this sense, we must face the undeniable truth that many individuals prefer a serene evening of streaming Netflix series rather than venturing out to meet others. It has become a comfort zone, a cocoon in which we feel at ease. The simulation effectively caters to our comfort zone and reinforces it. It never disrupts our sense of security. It is reality itself that challenges our comfort zone. Stepping out and engaging with others entails a certain level of risk and anxiety. Stepping out of our comfort zone and trying new things like traveling and exploring unfamiliar places can be challenging. That's why the virtual world has become more appealing compared to real-life experiences. In the virtual realm, everything is designed to make us feel comfortable and avoid disruption to our comfort zone. The more we immerse ourselves in the virtual world, the smaller our comfort zone becomes. For some people, even a simple task like going out to buy bread within a short distance can be overwhelming. Their comfort zone has shrunk to activities like streaming Netflix shows and ordering food through apps like Uber Eats. They don't need to exert much effort anymore. In the past, the comfort zone was much broader, requiring extreme situations like going to war, facing a serious illness, or experiencing a major loss to induce anxiety. In the past, there were only a few things that truly scared people apart from death. However, for those who have been confined for a long time, their comfort zone have become so restricted that even stepping outside to buy bread can feel like a monumental task, especially for individuals dealing with severe depression. They find solace in a simulated world where everything is effortless. With a simple click, they can order pizza and soda delivered right to their accommodation. They can binge watch Netflix series and drift off to sleep, feeling happy, warm, and at peace. Therefore, reality must make significant effort to surpass the allure of the virtual world. A collective sense of repulsion toward the virtual realm is needed to entice people back into reality. This is why I somewhat question Baudrillard's notion of reversibility. It's hard to imagine how much the simulation has advanced since Baudrillard wrote his book in 1981. While he was already ahead of his time, today's virtual world has progressed even further. We must acknowledge that organizations invest billions to make users addicted to virtual experiences and consumption. Saving the masses from this influence is nearly impossible. Therefore, I believe that only small minority groups have a chance to lead fulfilling lives. The system offers solutions that contradict the needs of individuals seeking fulfillment and good health. It promotes unhealthy fast food like McDonald's, addictive content such as TikTok, and algorithms for finding love that leave 90% of users frustrated. Present explicit content that distort relationships and human encounters. The content targeted at the general population is often low quality and addictive, turning people into passive consumers. Breaking free from the choices imposed by the system is crucial. In this regard, the movie Matrix provides an interesting suggestion for breaking free from these patterns dictated by the system.
You are here because you were sent here. You were told to come here and then you obeyed.
In the world of Matrix, the concept of free will is frequently pondered, but often in a way that encourages us to look deeper than the mere notion of being in control of our own lives. It invites us to explore uncomfortable and counterintuitive explanations. For instance, the encounter with the enigmatic character, the mirror engine. In the second film presents a deterministic perspective that undermines the idea of true freedom and control over our choices. This compels the audience to accept that neither Neo nor the others will truly be master of their own destiny. It introduces a thought process aimed at proving that every action is predetermined by the unyielding law of causality.
Causality. Action, reaction. Cause and effect.
Everything begins with choice.
No, wrong. Choice is an illusion created between those with power and those without.
With a hint of content, the mirror engine emphasizes how both his interlocutors and himself are trapped in a relentless machinery of causality. This realization leaves only the illusion of decision-making, stripping away true freedom and control over choice.
You see, I have sent her a dessert. A very special dessert. I wrote it myself. It starts so simply. Each line of the program creating a new effect, just like poetry. First, a rush, heat, her heart flutters. You can see it, Neo, yes? She does not understand why. Is it the wine? No. What is it and what is the reason? And soon it does not matter. Soon the why and the reason are gone. And all that matters is the feeling itself. Now, this is the nature of the universe. We struggle against it, we fight to deny it, but it is, of course, pretends it is a lie. Beneath our poised appearance, the truth is we are completely out of control. Causality. There is no escape from it. We are forever slaves to it.
By reminding them of this universal law, the mirror vengeance seeks to demolish any belief in the possibility of genuine choice. He emerging as an opposing force to the oracle, using pure logic to demonstrate that choice itself is an impossibility. On a universal scale, it is merely the outcome of predetermined programming. This notion implies that we are all ensnared in the internal cycle dictated by the system. The mirror vengeance elegance and alluring gesture eloquently portray the diabolical role of the tempter, whose aim is to sow confusion and doubt in the mind of mortals. He ignites the mind of those who consider freedom of choice as a foundational principle, as he grants meaning to their existence. This process is often employed by science to purportedly demonstrate that we are not truly free in our own decision-making, attributing the majority of our behavior to biological explanations, present life as a conditioned and predictable production. While this perspective holds some truth, it is not absolute. In other words, we are neither entirely product of our conditioning nor entirely free agents. Furthermore, although the mirror vengeance seems to have fully embraced the understanding that the chain of causality grants him power, he struggled to conceal his frustration at the ability to transcend it and glimpse beyond. This frustration later manifests as a desire to possess a treasure belonging to the oracle.
The eyes of the oracle.
Why desire to possess the oracle eyes if not to see what lies beyond his reach, namely to perceive beyond causality? When confronted with the question of choice, the oracle assumes a markedly different position. For her, it's not solely the act of choosing that holds significance.
Because you didn't come here to make the choice. You've already made it. You're here to try to understand why you made it.
Throughout our lives, we are invariably confronted with decisions ranging from trivial to momentous. However, to experience fulfillment, we do not necessarily require certitude in actively making these choices, as we already possess the intuitive sensation of doing so. We inherently believe ourselves to be the masters of our own choices, even though this may not always be the case. Hence, what matters most is not solely the possession of free will as the capacity to choose, but also the possession of free will as the ability to align ourselves with our chosen path. In essence, it's not merely the act of choosing that carries weight, but the underlying motivation behind our choices and how we navigate the consequences.
We can never see past the choices we don't understand.
The oracle affords the opportunity to transcend boundaries, granting him access to a profound comprehension of his own destiny and guiding him towards self-discovery. Her intention had never been to manipulate Neo's choices, but rather to aid him in comprehending them. Up until the encounter with the mirror vengeance, Neo's journey had been predominantly preordained, akin to a prophecy that left minimal room for his free will, except through introspection. An execution of a program was dictated by a succession of equations. Neo simply unfolds his code along a predetermined path. It is only through his encounter with the source that he would attain the ability to surpass this previously unyielding conditioning. The pivotal confrontation with the architect of the Matrix, assuming a paternal figure resembling ancient biblical depictions, signifies an essential step toward transcendence and the inception of the collapse of an illusory world. The architect presents himself as such.
I created the Matrix.
He conveys to Neo that his immaculate creation could not maintain harmony due to the imperfections of human beings, necessitating the integrations of Neo's systemic anomaly into his equations. At that moment, Neo represents the sixth incarnation, potentially elucidating the presence of the wall of screens observed during the interrogation scene at the outset of the first Matrix. These myriad images of Neo might symbolize alternative choices or alternate versions of himself under the constant surveillance of the architect. The scene commences with the depiction of the cosmos, accentuating its occurrence beyond the confines of space and time, within an environment that induces a transformation of consciousness. This is where Neo will realize that he is a glitch in the system, causing disruptions in the original equations.
Choice. The problem is choice.
The essence of choice, the predicaments lie within the choices. Every choice that has come his way so far carries the mark of duality. Follow the right rabbit or not, opt for the red or blue pill, accept or reject a tempting cookie. Decisions such as choosing between his own life or that of Morpheus, taking or refusing the red candy offered by the Oracle, baffling Smith or evading him, and even selecting between the left and right door in the architect's chamber. Scenarios expose the binary nature of this world and the calculated trap that ensnares both the viewer and the characters.
A harmony of mathematical precision.
A harmonious balance governed by mathematical precision, disturbed by an anomaly that was initially eradicated but then resurrected. This anomaly, in its quest to overcome its adversary, divided and multiplied to the point of losing its own identity. It is here that Neo faces a pivotal choice. Not one for others to make on his behalf, but for him to truly understand, as predicted by the Oracle. He must transcend the binary equation of 0 and 1 and ascend to a trinity of choices, a mathematical prophecy that echoes the birth of a new world. Thus, faced with the dilemma of saving humanity or saving Trinity, he defies all rationality, joins her, and rejects the inevitability of his own demise, embracing the hope of ending the war.
Hope. It is the quintessential human delusion, simultaneously the source of your greatest strength and your greatest weakness.
The tribe presented to Neo aims to evaluate his capacity to embody what the mirror vengeance and Persephone have sensed within him, to courageously accept the consequences of ultimate disobedience and surpass all logical constraint by defying the relentless law of causality. This journey propels him toward a profound transcendence. Neo advances, eradicating ignorance, overcoming doubts and errors, progressing towards understanding the invisible principle that underpin internal truth. He stands at the precipice of revelation. Like a true initiate, he must shed all pretenses, relinquishing that which restrains him in order to surrender completely. Since the very beginning of his journey, Thomas Anderson has been immersed in a rigid and hierarchical world. As long as he abides by the rules imposed by the system, nothing significant happens to him. He is conditioned, trapped within the confines of his own identity. The embodiment of control constantly reminds him of his condition by repetitively uttering his name.
You have a problem with authority, Mr. Anderson. The time has come to make a choice, Mr. Anderson. You're Thomas A. Anderson. Mr. Anderson. You, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson.
This repetition holds great significance, for it keeps his mind imprisoned in the lowest level of human consciousness. In our own lives, this bombardment commences during early childhood. As soon as language is imparted to us, we learn to recognize, articulate, and inquire about our own name and the names of others. It is at this point that the process of identification is set into motion, a programming that essentially grafts qualities and flows onto our developing sense of self, from recognition to humiliation, acceptance to rejection, trust to betrayal, fairness to injustice, and companionship to abandonment. Our minds become subject to turbulence, identification, and conditioning. We become accustomed to having all our behaviors influenced by the mechanisms of victory and success, reward and punishment, favoring the games of influence and persuasion over the goodwill and noble intentions. The cheerful and delicate window into the world that our childhood represents gradually gets consumed by a society that only acknowledges what it can possess, categorize, and label. It will take us for what Jung called the persona, the identity mask we all wear. Yet, as the philosopher Kierkegaard wisely stated, to give me a name is to annihilate me. By assigning a name to me, by labeling me, you erase all the other possibilities of what I could be. Remember, initially called Thomas Anderson, then Anderson, then Neo, and eventually the One. Each designation carried the weight of the function it represents, conditioning his perception of himself. Whether these names were flattering or contemptuous, they all bore the imprint of conditioning. But to fulfill oneself, an initiate must free themselves of this burden because it veils the truth of who they are. This also implies distancing oneself from their own community and the expectations projected onto them in order to truly meet oneself and reveal their own uniqueness. However, to achieve this, one must also reconcile opposites, integrate polarities, and understand their duality, but everything carries within it its opposites.
I just thought, you were a guy.
This dynamic of polarity is evident in the relationship between Neo and Trinity. Trinity manifests through a distinctly masculine demeanor for combat prowess and hacking skills. She exhibits natural leadership qualities.
Dodge this.
As seen in her direct and assertive tone when addressing Neo.
Get in. Lie back. Lift up your shirt.
And since I am the ranking officer on this ship, if you don't like it, I believe you can go to hell. Because you aren't going anywhere else.
This masculine tone is also apparent in the iconic kissing scene, playfully subverting the traditional archetype of the charming prince whose genuine love revives the beloved. Conversely, we witness a hero growing increasingly sensitive, vulnerable, and embracing a more feminine disposition.
I'm scared, Trey.
This interplay of inversion is scattered throughout the film, serving as a reminder that appearances can be deceiving. Smith and Neo share a profound connection, united by their propensity for disobedience. This inclination to break free, to defy norms, underscore the fundamental need to find meaning in life, to discover one's purpose, role, and mission. This journey inevitably involves shedding the conditioned self, undergoing a symbolic death. The same life force that drives Neo toward knowledge propels Smith toward expansion. Both traverse the path of opposite and eventually converge at the intersection of uniqueness. If Neo seeks peace, he must liberate himself from conditioning, transcending the limitation of his beliefs. He must embrace faith and transform his shadow, unveiling his true essence. Battles with Smith beyond their thrilling actions symbolize Neo's path, a voyage to the other side of the mirror, a profound introspection to confront personal demons. It is through decisive action, mastery, and fluidity that he will bend his mind and perception, finding equilibrium in stillness, non-action, and surrender.
What are you trying to tell me? That I can dodge bullets?
No, Neo. I'm trying to tell you that when you're ready, you won't have to.
We should go through an internal alchemy, turning the heaviness of our minds into something precious, transmuting our shadows into illumination. Neo initially believes that it is through combat that he can overcome an external adversity. However, the more he fights, the stronger his enemy becomes, and the adversity grows. The struggle continues until he realizes that opposing forces cancel each other out. When the mind aligns with a state of pure consciousness, an inner realm devoid of personal conflicts and duality, a space where battles cease to exist, that is when awakening happens. It is a sacred experience that occurs when a human minds make a profound decision to live under these conditions. And regardless of the circumstances, deep within, Neo knows that he will achieve his goals.
It was inevitable.
Once he embraces this realization, his subconscious becomes inexorably tied to the desired outcome.
I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. I'm going to show them a world without you. A world without rules and controls, without borders or boundaries. A world where anything is possible.
By delving into the thought of Baudrillard and the world of the Matrix film, we can vividly illustrate profound teachings. However, some concepts may still seem abstract, while others may appear useful but challenging to implement. Therefore, in order to introduce more practicality and empower you to become free and in control of your life, I recommend that you subscribe to my newsletter. Click the first link in the description to receive the next email. If you enjoyed this content, please share and like this video. I sincerely thank you for honoring it with your attentions. Stay sharp, stay lucid, keep control of your life. See you in the next video.